Absolutely. And what this 2-week break could be good for is embedding some of those new signings in, because as we mentioned previously, a lot of them arrived very late on in the summer. In the summer window at the back end of August. Some of them then went off on international duty, and then they came back. And when the season sort of resumed after that, people like David Strelec, for example, he'd only had a couple of days training before the matches sort of resumed. So could the timing of this window be good for Middlesbrough from that point of view in terms of embedding some of these new signings and just giving them a little bit more time to play on the training ground and settle into the surroundings?
Yeah, I think for some of them, definitely, the likes of Kaly, Sene, it's going to help him. I think the kind of major downfall or the one negative for Boro of this break coming as it does is that, 3 of your new attacking signings are away in international duty. So all the work you're going to be doing in this next kind of 10, 11 days or so, building up the Ipswich game, is going to be without Strelec, without Nypan, and without Hansen. The 3 of them are away on international duty. And of course, adding to that, so is Aidan Morris, who is one of the starting central midfielders and obviously, pivotal to the way that Middlesbrough want to attack in games as well and kind of, aggressively press and turn the ball over. So, there's a key chunk of players there, and particularly the 3 attackers when we talk about needing to kind of gel that attack and build those connections. They're not going to be here taking part in that training. So that's unfortunate that they're not going to have that kind of, time to do that. And there was talk of potentially having a behind the closed doors training game where I'm sure they'd be working on that kind of thing as well. Again, those 3 players won't be able to be involved. And, a bit of a different dynamic with this break is the fact that our first game back is the Friday night against Ipswich as well. And you're looking at that, and particularly Morris and Hansen, who are playing the other side of the Atlantic. And I think for Morris, his final game for the USA is like 2 a.m. UK time on the Tuesday morning. And then Sontje Hansen, his game is, I think, midnight on the Wednesday morning. So you're looking at that and thinking, right, by the time Morris could be back in by the Wednesday, and Hansen's probably not going to be back in until the Thursday. They're going to be, relatively jet lagged, having flown all the way across the Atlantic. And you're looking at them 2 in particular and thinking it's probably going to be difficult for either of those players to start the Ipswich game. Now, Hansen possibly wouldn't start that game anyway, I'd argue, based on what we saw at Portsmouth. But obviously Morris has started, I think, every game, if I'm not mistaken, this season so far, and is obviously a massive player for Boro. He's been excellent so far this season. And I think it'll be a push really to expect him, particularly if he plays, quite a few minutes for the USA in their 2 games during this camp. It's going to be quite difficult to ask Morris to then step in and play that Ipswich game. And, that'd be a blow for Boro, because there's no doubt in how important Aidan Morris is. Although, the one thing I would say about that is that the good thing is that the work that Boro did in the transfer window, and particularly late in the window, and bringing Alan Brown to the club on loan, I'd feel comfortable enough, confident even, I'd see it in him going into that midfield alongside Hayden Hackney, and it not being, too big a disaster for Boro to be without Aidan Morris for that one game. But, ideally, as you say, you'd like those 3 attacking players to be here on Teesside this next week or so, because definitely I think one of the big issues of the attack right now is that there are so many new faces and there isn't that connection there at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the attack is one of the big talking points of the season so far. I mean, Rob Edwards appears to still be experimenting. He still seems to be trying to find that best sort of formula in attack. He's got a number of attacking options now. A lot of them came in at the back end of the summer transfer window. He seems to be kind of mixing and matching them a little bit to try and find what his best front 3 is. And at the moment, it kind of seems still a little bit unclear what that would actually be, because none of the solutions that he's kind of posed have been necessarily perfect. So from your point of view, Craig, what have you made of that conundrum and that sort of jigsaw that he's kind of trying to piece together at the moment?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I think you can clearly see that, particularly with the new players, Strelec, Nypan, Hansen, Sene, and even he and even, the rest of the players are still trying to work out really how do we get the best out of these players as individuals? How do we need to service them? Where do we need to play them? Who do we need to play off them, and that kind of thing. I think you're still seeing that being worked out, really. And, that's not uncommon. If we think back to when Emmanuel Latilaf first arrived at the club, it took him a little while to get bedded in. It took him a little time to get up to speed and get used to the Championship. And then, as we see, for the rest of Boro's players to kind of work out, okay, this is how we get the best out of Emmanuel Latilaf. So that's not to be unexpected, really. That's natural that will happen. And there will be that kind of initial bedding in period, particularly for young forwards who are arriving from leagues outside of England. In terms of, it was interesting, I asked him about the attack and the fact that there hadn't been much consistency there so far this season recently, and he kind of suggested that while it would be excellent if three, if they continue playing with the three that they have been, if three players kind of, perform so well that they become undroppable, essentially. But actually, I think what Boro have got this season, and very purposefully with how they're recruited in the summer, is very different options. So all of the attacking players all offer something a bit different to the other. And I think there's a big possibility, actually, that we'll never see any consistency at the top end of the pitch for Boro, because as well as kind of form and fitness, Rob Edwards will be looking at the opposition and thinking, how do we best hurt this side that we're playing this weekend or whatever. And then he'll be, looking at his options and saying, right, who best does that? I think he mentioned that after Portsmouth, he obviously brought Hansen and Sene in for that Portsmouth game. And he spoke about the fact that he felt like pace could be the answer against Portsmouth, and particularly Kaly Sene running off the last shoulder and getting in behind, that he felt that would be the way to beat Portsmouth. And, actually early on, Kaly Sene did make a couple of decent runs in behind, and, Boro kind of made the pass, but not effectively enough. It wasn't successful enough to kind of offer Sene a good goal scoring opportunity in either time. But there was that early sign there that actually there could be success in doing this. The issue was they then went and conceded that goal, which allowed Portsmouth to kind of retreat a bit, sit in the low block, and ultimately try and protect the 1-goal lead that they had. So that space in behind wasn't there anymore. But I think that's a sign, really, of how Rob Edwards is at the moment, at least, going to, kind of attack this season and look at it. I think, looking at the opposition and using his various options and the variety and the adaptability that he has within his squad to find the right blend game by game. As I say, I mean, if three emerge and kind of see where we're undroppable, we're in this unbelievable form, then of course he's going to keep picking them. But I think there is going to be a lot of focus on game to game, what's going to be the best option for this particular game, who's going to be the one who has the particular set of qualities and traits that will cause the most problems for whoever we're coming up against this week. So I'm not sure there will be much kind of consistency in selection in that regard up top. And, I know a lot of people like to see consistency, and obviously it's great if it's working and your strikers, your forwards are in form. But actually what it can lead to is becoming quite predictable and easily to defend against, easy to play against. Whereas that's one thing, I think, once Boro click, once they really get going in that sense in attack, I think it's going to be difficult for oppositions to know what Middlesbrough are going to do. We've seen they can change the formation and still be effective as they were in the first half against Stoke when they went 4-3-3 in that one. And as we say, they can change the personnel as well. And for example, Morgan Whittaker will do something completely different to Sontje Hansen, or, Tommy Conway will do something completely different to David Strelec. And that kind of thing where, opposition managers just won't be able to effectively prepare their team to play against Middlesbrough because they won't know what Boro they're going to come up against. I think the key for Boro, rather than finding consistency in selection and attack, is just creating those links and creating those connections and ultimately, finding the way to get the best out of each other. Same with Strelec, for example, of late. Like since he's come in, I think he's had 5 appearances now, and he's just not quite yet got going. And it's largely not his own doing. He's been starved of service, really. And, there's been the odd bright touch. He's looked quite good when he's come a bit deeper and kind of looked to receive the ball to feet with his back to goal. But it's not really the role he's yet been asked to do. So finding the right roles for each individual and having everyone in the team understanding this is how we best use this player, that's going to be what brings improvement, I think, for Boro in attack. And unfortunately, that can only come with time.
Absolutely, and you said it there about David Strelec, because he's been one of he was sort of the blockbuster arrival, I guess, at the back end of the summer window. He's the one that everyone was very, very excited about after the last international break and what he did on international duty against Germany. And obviously he's done well. He's played a number of games, but fans are kind of feeling that maybe he's not being used in the best possible way, as you just mentioned there. He's maybe a little bit more used to coming deep, and maybe he'd actually be better off in one of those supporting roles as opposed to playing as the number 9. What's your thoughts on that, Craig? Do you think Middlesbrough would benefit from seeing him slightly deeper, with maybe Tommy Conway playing back as the number 9 as the centre forward?
Yeah, I think based on what we've seen so far, that would appear to me to be, the best way to get something, better out of David Strelec. I think, whether it's kind of playing with a number 10 and 2 strikers, and you have Conway and Strelec kind of next to each other and feeding off each other, or whether Strelec comes and becomes one of the 10s with Conway as the striker. That, to me, at the moment, looks like the most obvious way of getting the best out of Strelec's qualities. He kind of would ultimately, I know it was a different formation, but he would kind of become like what Chuba Akpom was under Michael Carrick's Boro, that first iteration of Michael Carrick's Boro, where he was the kind of player who would drop into the hole and you'd constantly hit him, and every attack would go through Chuba Akpom. And Carrick would say it all the time, when Akpom was scoring all these goals, and obviously that was getting all the headlines, but he was quick all the time to reiterate, like, he's about more than just goals. His importance to this team is far more than just goals. And I think Strelec has what looks like the qualities to be a similar kind of focal point of the attack. And the issue right now, and Edwards has explained this, and why he's kind of flipping it at the moment, and Conway is the deeper forward, is out of possession. Mentioned earlier, obviously, how, this form and this brilliant start of the season has been built on the foundations and the solid system out of possession. And, early on, he's still getting Strelec up to speed. He's still having Strelec learn the tactical intricacies and the work that's needed, not just in possession, but out of possession. And so he's explained this already, Rob Edwards, in that he's, at the moment, Conway is the better option in that deeper role because he'll do the work when Middlesbrough don't have the ball. Whereas at the moment, Strelec is still getting up to speed and still learning that side of it. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if eventually, whether it's once we come back after this break or a bit further down the line, Strelec does move into one of those deeper roles and becomes a bit of a, if you like, a link man for Boro, because clearly he's got the technical ability when he gets the ball to do that. And I think Boro need to get him on the ball a lot more than they ultimately have been so far. Whereas Conway is that more natural kind of number 9, high intensity, loves to press, loves to run around off the shoulder and just basically be a nuisance for defenders. That's what Tommy Conway does, isn't it? So, I definitely think in time that will be the way they eventually go. I just think it's about getting Strelec up to speed, and he's still adapting to the Championship. He's still learning the Championship, and Middlesbrough can't afford ultimately to have him in that role and not doing the defensive work, because, as we say, it relies, and as we saw at Portsmouth, if you allow a team to get 1-0 up on you, if you allow a team to get a goal, then suddenly the job becomes a lot harder, because teams tend to respect the quality you've got and stick as many men behind the ball as they can. So as important as getting the attack right is, Middlesbrough can't ignore and can't forget that the success of the early part of the season has been built on how solid and how compact they've been defensively. So I think ultimately at the moment, that's why Strelec isn't dropping into one of the deeper forward roles.
Mm-hmm. And what have you made of Kaly so far? Because he arrived, and I think his arrival was almost a little bit overshadowed by the other signing of Strelec. He was the sort of blockbuster signing, but Kaly came in for a much more modest fee. But you could argue that he's made a bigger impact in terms of the goals that he's scored and the performances that he's put in. So what have you made of him so far since he's arrived, Craig?
Yeah, I've liked the look of him. I think he's raw, but I think there's definitely a talent there that you know, with good coaching, you can polish him and he could become a really, really you know, effective striker. Mentioned that, you know, you can already see his strengths are kind of running in behind, running off the last shoulder. And he is the one really who so far Boro have kind of almost worked out, right, this is how we get the best out of Kaly Sene. And he scored 2 good goals recently against West Brom and Southampton, wasn't it? So, you know, and then, as I say, I tried to use similar tactics early on against Portsmouth before they changed. I thought there were positive early signs at Portsmouth as well of him, you know, kind of getting used to the physicality and that side of the Championship. When they were playing the ball into him and he was kind of in a 50-50 duel back to goal with a defender, more often than not, he got there first and he won the flick. And it was just a case that, you know, Middlesbrough didn't get bodies close enough around him. So when he was flicking it on, when he was getting the first touch to the ball, it wasn't always going to a teammate and Middlesbrough's attacks were breaking down. But actually what he was doing was his job. He was winning that first ball. He was getting that flick. He was winning the duel. So, you know, there was encouraging signs there for him. As I say, I think he is still raw. I think there is still work to be done on him, but definitely, like, he's already proven he's a good option. And, you know, whether it's starting games when you feel like at Portsmouth that there's going to be space in behind to hit them, or whether it's coming off the bench when defenses are tiring, and, you know, perhaps like in the West Brom game, there's the Boro 1-0 up and West Brom have got to kind of come out and try and find a way back into the game. Inevitably, there's then space behind for Boro to exploit, and clearly Sene is a good player who can carry a ball or can run through to balls in behind. He has the space, he has the power, and he can finish as well. He's proven that. So yeah, I think he's going to be a really effective player for Boro this season for those kind of moments.